Hey there, history nerds and curious weirdos. Welcome back to Naked History Debrief, the after party to our main Violet Jessop episode. If the main episode was the glittering ocean liner, this is the lifeboat ride afterward where we swap weird stories, clear up some myths, and maybe paddle into some side channels. Last time we walked alongside Violet Jessop, Miss Unsinkable herself, as she survived not one, not two, but 3 maritime disasters. Tonight, we're going to be digging deeper into a couple of those razor-thin escapes and meeting some fellow Unsinkables who shared her weird resume of maritime mayhem. And because it wouldn't be a debrief without zooming the lens out, we'll finish with a spin through history, covering the events for this week in history. Spoiler alert, it includes a week that has revolutions, inventions, and a certain Sputnik. So let's climb into the lifeboat and just watch out for the propellers. In the main episode, we touched on Violet's near-fatal brush with Britannic's whirling propellers. Now let's sit with that horror just a little bit longer. When Britannic struck a German mine in 1916, the evacuation turned chaotic. Some lifeboats launched before the engines had even stopped. Imagine rowing away from a massive hospital ship only to feel your boat being sucked backward by the pull of the propellers. Now, Violet realized the danger just in time. She leapt overboard, slamming her head against the keel, and blacked out before resurfacing. Now, although she was, 2 boats weren't so lucky. They were shredded in seconds, turning wood and human beings into splinters. What strikes me particularly is how close Violet came to being a part of that tragedy. If she had hesitated even for just a heartbeat, we wouldn't be telling her story here today. It's a reminder that her Unsinkable title wasn't just about bad luck and survival, it was about decisive action in the face of absolute terror. Honestly, this was the moment she came closest to not being Miss Unsinkable, but instead becoming just another name on the casualty list. And Violet wasn't the only one to walk away from multiple disasters. Enter Arthur John Priest, a stoker, the man who shoveled coal into the ship's hungry boilers. His record? Olympics collision, Titanic sinking, and Britannic's sinking, and even more incidents aboard other ships like Alcantara and Donegal during the war. Priest earned the nickname the Unsinkable Stoker, though, unlike Violet, his survival was grimmer. He was repeatedly injured, repeatedly traumatized, and eventually refused to work at sea because no company wanted the bad omen of employing him. Imagine surviving the greatest maritime disasters of your era only to be blacklisted for it. That's almost a cruel irony. Priest's story adds a working-class dimension to this whole idea of unsinkable. These weren't thrill seekers, they were laborers doing hard jobs just trying to keep paychecks coming. And yet their lives got tangled up in some of the deadliest moments in maritime history. Now, if Violet and Arthur were long-term players in the game of survival, Wenman Wykeham-Musgrave was speedrunning it. He was a midshipman in the Royal Navy during World War I, and in 1914 he managed to survive 3 sinkings in 1 day. Now here's how. Now Wykeham-Musgrave was aboard the HMS Aboukir when it was torpedoed by a German U-boat. Now he survived only to be picked up by the HMS Hogue. Hogue was subsequently torpedoed as well. Now, he survived the sinking of the Hogue and then was taken aboard the HMS Cressy, which, you guessed it, was also torpedoed and sunk. 3 ships, 3 sinkings, 1 day. And somehow, he lived through all of them. And it's almost cartoonish, except it was horrifyingly real. He sometimes was called the Unsinkable Midshipman. So if you ever feel like you're having a bad day at work, just remember it could be worse. You could be Wykeham-Musgrave punching your time card 3 times in the cold North Sea. Alright, let's zoom out and check in on what else was happening across history this week. Strap in, because it's quite a ride. On September 29, 1789, the U.S. War Department establishes the first regular army. In the early republic, America didn't trust standing armies. It was too much of a whiff of monarchy for the colonists. But on this day in history, Congress authorized a tiny regular force, just a few hundred men. Small beginnings for what would one day be the Pentagon's sprawling empire. Now imagine telling them back then, yeah, one day this will involve space lasers. On September 30th, 1927, Babe Ruth hits his 60th home run of the season. Now this broke records and helped turn baseball into America's pastime. Ruth wasn't just a slugger, he was a cultural force, living large in an age of prohibition and speakeasies. His 60 home runs stood until 1961, when fellow Yankee Roger Maris broke it. It's a reminder that sports heroes often become symbols of something bigger than their stats. On the first day of October 1949, Mao Zedong declares the People's Republic of China. In Tiananmen Square, Mao stood before crowds and proclaimed a new nation, shifting the balance of global politics overnight. For Americans, this was just another chapter in the nightmare of communism expanding. For millions of Chinese, it was either liberation or a new form of struggle. Either way, the world had just changed irrevocably. On October 2nd of 1967, Thurgood Marshall was sworn in as the first African-American Supreme Court Justice. Now, Marshall had already made history with Brown v. Board of Education helping dismantle segregation. Becoming a justice was just the next chapter. Imagine the symbolism, especially for the era that this was in, a black man on the highest court in the country, still roiled by civil rights battles. Progress, but with plenty of road left ahead. On October 3rd, 1952, the United Kingdom tests its first atomic bomb. Off the coast of Australia, Britain entered the nuclear club. The mushroom cloud over the Montebello Islands marked the moment Britain said, "Hey, we can end civilization too." It was Cold War theater and a reminder that the arms race wasn't just a US-Soviet affair. And finally, on October 4th, 1957, Sputnik is launched into space. A shining, beeping sphere from the Soviet Union blasted into orbit, kicking off the space race. Americans freaked out, imagining Soviet nukes falling from orbit. Kids started practicing duck and cover drills, and meanwhile, humanity had just taken its first step into the cosmos. All that because the little metal ball went beep. Alright, that's where we'll drop the anchor for this debrief. From spinning propellers to unsinkable stokers to midshipmen who must have thought the North Sea had it out for them, history once again proves it can be stranger than fiction. As always, thanks for listening. And if you're enjoying these dives, don't forget to follow or subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. October is our month of eerie and uncanny episodes, a little extra shiver for your historical spine. Coming up next on Naked History, we'll be heading straight into the dark woods of colonial Massachusetts with the Salem Witch Trials. I know a lot of my witches and warlocks out there are very excited for this. It's a very fun thing to get into the deep dive, and so far I've been loving researching into it. Past the Crucible, which everyone had to read in school. #you suck, Abigail Williams. We'll talk possession, paranoia, politics, and how a small town's hysteria still echoes in our culture today. After that, we've got some more special Halloween season stories lined up. Creepy, curious, and just the right amount of unsettling. So, sharpen your stakes, keep your salt handy, and maybe leave a nightlight on. because this October, history's getting spooky. As always, I've been Dylan Gassaway, and this has been Naked History Debrief. So until next time, stay weird, stay curious, and stay naked, historically speaking. Have a good one.